Thank you for joining XROM, which is India's first AR/VR focused podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Sonal Ahuja, who's the CEO of VR Academy, a edtech startup focused on design and immersive reality metaverse development for children and youth. He has over 25 years experience in 3D design, planning, creative art, and creating immersive XR technologies with a focus on AI. He's a visiting faculty at Imperial College London, where he did his PhD research focusing on use of artificial intelligence applications for digital twins and smart mobility. So, Sonal, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. So, you have done your PhD in AI. You have a work experience in city design, digital twins, smart mobility. What made you transition to virtual reality?
Right. So I started my career when we were young. Really, there was nothing called virtual reality. To be honest, I'm talking way back in the 90s or 80s. When we were children, and I went to. I was very much driven towards both science and art. So I used to paint a lot, oil on canvas, and I was very much interested in physics. In my school, I was not a classical student who would study or ratify, books. Unfortunately, that's what happens, with many of us in India. There is such a large competition. And in those days, there were very few choices, and parents were not even aware of what career paths could exist. So it was either you become a doctor or you become an engineer. And I came from a family of both doctors or engineers. And if you can't do that, then you become a lawyer. If you can't become a lawyer, you become a teacher. So these were the only 4 or 5 options, career paths, which were very prevalent during the 80s, to be honest. And none of them really appealed me, to be honest, because I was very deeply interested in physics, pure physics or astrophysics. I was reading a lot. In fact, I had written papers and submitted to Jefferson's Physical Laboratory at Harvard when I was about 15 years old. Very unusual kind of outlook. I used to study maths like it was for me like painting pictures. So my brain, I believe, was different. Now, of course, you can put a class or a category to it as early childhood. And I would never memorize things to the core or heart or ratify. For me, I had a photographic memory. I could remember things very quickly. And for me, if it was an exam, I wanted to be stress-free and play the night before the exam. The night before the exam is not the time to learn or, memorize something. That time you should be relaxed. So very unusual setting. And my mother and parents always encouraged me to do whatever I would feel happy. There was no family pressure as such, and I was lucky to have that. But then, in India, for example, when you're studying, especially those days, everything depended on your board exams and your, the engineering test at IIT, etc., and so on and so forth. And those never appealed to me. So while I had applied for admission to American universities, they were unaffordable to study physics in those days. The scholarships were tight. And I found heart in one of my friends, he had just passed out from the School of Planning and Architecture. And, when I saw his portfolio and his work, it really impressed me. I saw that architecture or design could be halfway between science and mathematics. Because, to make a good building is not just you create something beautiful, it's got to stand on ground. So it's got to obey the laws of physics, and engineering and science and art both combined together as architecture. So I applied for, in School of Planning and Architecture, and I was lucky to get selected. And I selected city planning because for me, this was a much bigger project. And in those fields, we picked up the field of sustainability and mobility because that was overtly mathematical and logical, in my opinion. So I could focus my path on sustainable cities where mobility issues are core. So your career path then somehow becomes a derivative of what you have learned. I went to the UK to study, and I did a master's in transport planning and sustainability over there. And after that, I started to work in consultancy. So during those projects which we were doing, some of them were highly linked towards new systems or new transport systems. And, urban systems are quite complex. If you give priority to cars, you basically take away priority from everything else. And if you want to make equitable society, there are more people in a bus than in a car. So you must give buses a priority. And Ken Livingstone was a very, very sharp mayor at that point in time in London. And he was planning to build a tram in central London, going down from Camden Town to Waterloo, and then going into some of the dilapidated parts of the city, Brixton and Peckham. Those are still very low-income economies in the city of London. And his idea was, if you put a tram, a high-quality transport system, it will rejuvenate. And there were a lot of planning objections to it. So I was traveling in India, and I saw my brother, Rishi, you may also know. He was very much into gaming. And when I saw the graphics quality of his work, it was totally amazing. He was making games for various people, and some of the graphics which was being done, he was preparing parts of London which were going in, projects such as Need for Speed, etc., and so on and so forth. I was totally amazed and zapped. And I was there with my professor visiting India, talking about how mathematical modeling and simulation can help in decision-making process. But to me, the graphics looked really amazing. And we thought that if we can combine his graphics with our mathematical models, then it'll be truly amazing, because we will make these tests which we are creating, digital twins which we were creating, give them real value to from a visual point of view, for a layman's perspective where decision making can be fast. So one thing leads on to another, and we did a small research project. There were many challenges. First one, it didn't work, but next one was amazing. And then we onboarded Rishi to create the visualizations, mathematical simulations of this tram project in central London. It was called the Cross River Tram Project. And the results were totally amazing. People loved it. People who had objections to it, they could understand the scheme better. And Transport for London saw great value in that tool which was built. And then, Rishi completely transformed his path from not only gaming, but to do these digital twin creations powered by mathematical simulation. And a few years ago, this company, the software that we were using, I joined them. I was a small shareholder in their big system. And this company was acquired by Porsche Group. And then I got my freedom, and Rishi asked me, as my brother, Sunny, why don't you come and join us? And then again, the idea was, what new can we do? What will be the innovation? So we went on a trip to Japan about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And we started looking at scouting for technology and where the future would be. And when we saw virtual reality and the way it was being used to explain ideas in an immersive way, for me, that was the key. So we had dabbled with HoloLens, and it was, a great experience, but not affordable. When we saw VR, it was amazing. And we said, okay, let's get into this and let's start, our production pipeline as Novatech Group, focusing exclusively on virtual reality, because that's the way we could see the future going. So long story, to cut the long story short, a mixture of science and maths. And that's how virtual reality got involved.
Lovely. How cool is that, Sunny? Because I think your journey has been super awesome. Somebody who's been invested in AI and somebody who understands physics, especially you mentioned astrophysics, your background, math, science, and then, building solutions, meeting with your brother, understanding graphics, and building digital twins and building solutions for the London tram, and eventually getting into I'm sorry, I kind of missed out on your city planning, the city planning part, where the sustainability, mobility, architecture and design, so you've got your hands everywhere, and I think you understand having an understanding of city design, architecture, digital twins, physics, AI, virtual reality. I think this knowledge can really help you in creating something extremely wonderful. I want to go back to the beginning of the conversation. You mentioned about rote learning, and that's the problem with in India's education. We'll try and touch the digital twins part also, because I think that's very interesting. But I want to first start with the education part. And you mentioned about rote learning. And that is the problem with India's education system. And you were lucky that you had a you had parents who would not pressure, who have not pressured you. But I think in India, we families and parents, they actually pressure their kids, and that's the reason, that's rote learning, and that's the reason they choose just a very narrow profession. It's like either you become a doctor or engineer, when the future is becoming extremely broad. Now, if you have to identify a few problems that associated with India's education system, what would you say are those problems, and how do you think virtual reality can play a role in solving those?
The problem comes from the fact that there is a big generational gap between the parents and the teachers and the children. This is the root cause of the problem, where today's children face a huge amount of mental stress that it was never there in our world. Why this stress comes? Because firstly, they are aware and they're connected of possibilities. And when you get stressed when things don't happen your way, okay? Or if you don't get something that you desire, you'll become sad. So we also in our, Shastras is written that desire is a root cause of misery. But that doesn't mean that you should not have desires at all, because if you got no desire, then you will do nothing. So the idea is that okay, you have desires and you don't connect it to things, but let the things also not connect to you. So you become in the middle path. And this conscious learning is what the parents and children must do, and the educators must do together in the triangle. You see, children spend half of their time at home, okay, but the other half they're also spending in schools as well. So the educators and communicators must be using the right tools, the latest technologies. Some of these technologies are unaffordable or they're extremely expensive. That's the other thing. But there's no reason why, at least as a teacher or educator, I cannot get the right skills and knowledge and experiment. Maybe I learned something this way, but now the technology has changed and it's time to learn new. A lot of good teachers, you would see, they are not just teaching 8 hours in the school, but 8 hours they're preparing for their lessons as well. They want to go and dig out to see what is even though Shakespeare is the same, he hasn't changed for last 400 years, but they want to apply Shakespearean, theater to modern day principles. So this is the thing, that our education needs to adapt with the changing times. And this is not a question of money, because we can find the money from the right resources. And I believe that God only gives you problems that you can solve. And there's a big saying, at least in the UK, this was, which I learned as well, those who can, they teach. So unfortunately, teaching has gone down the list of profession where if you can't do anything, then you end up teaching. This is the other problem in our society. We need to value teachers just like gurus, and it needs to be a noble profession. It doesn't need to be the least paid profession in the world. Unfortunately, school teachers are not very well paid in many parts of the world, and therefore they have to resort to other things to support their income, like being extra classes after school, etc., etc., etc. But that doesn't need to happen. And this is where the difference has happened between developed countries and developing countries, where teachers are honored and they get as good salaries as doctors or lawyers, because they are actually building their future. Yes, it is a recession-proof, system. And also there is a lesser disconnect between the parents and the teachers and the children, which allow children to experiment while safeguarding them. So what can be done to make things better is firstly motivation on all the three sides. Parents need to understand what is happening with their children's life by not just giving them the gadgets, but understanding or maybe playing games with them. If I understand what's happening in Fortnite or in Roblox or Minecraft, I know what is right and wrong with it, and I can guide it better. It's not just, okay, giving them the iPad and that the problem is solved. No, teachers also need to innovate with the children as well, so as to see what is happening really, behind the scenes as well. So are my tools up to date? Am I ready to do the surgery as a doctor, for example, solving the problem? Do I know the latest technologies? And then the children also need to be exposed. I tell you that no child has got any problem. Only the teacher has a problem, or the system has a problem, that you're unable to, make the child inclusive. So if a child has a stomach pain in the class, that means something is not right within the education, within the way we have taught. Every child should love coming to a class no matter whatever the class is, and not be unhappy with the class. Then this is the art of teaching, really. So then it should, we need to upskill ourselves. And then the students also need to be exposed. If you expose the child, they will find their own ways. Some will like, some will not like, and that's the story. I believe these are the three things. So they need to work together. Teachers, students, parents, all together, and with an open dialogue.
Right. And where's the role of virtual reality? How do you think virtual reality will help in this, the future of education? You also mentioned, I mean, most of the schools or colleges are extremely traditional and legacy driven, and they hold on to their ways of teaching or conducting classes. Now, you rightfully mentioned, that there's this various dynamics which is being played out, and technology has come in as this huge thing. Uh, how are schools or colleges reacting to this? How open are they towards this new technology, such as virtual reality or AI personalized education?
Okay, so I also think that there is a big lacune or a gap between what people understand and what they have experienced regarding virtual reality or even artificial intelligence, and let alone the whole idea of metaverse. These are very, very new terms. When I did, my research, the only reason why we developed some algorithms using now the terminology is artificial intelligence was to solve a complex problem which you cannot solve in linear maths, like linear maths meaning simple equations. So then we developed algorithms which would learn or self-learn. So they were mimicking biology. Some of these algorithms, for example, are called genetic algorithms or neural networks, etc. And the idea was to solve a problem. Okay. Now, if you give the child, let's take a problem to solve, then they can apply the technology better. So rather than just doing theoretical knowledge, which will lead to rotifying, the idea is to create a curriculum which is based on problem solving. And fortunately or unfortunately, in developing countries, especially in India, we have this term called jugaad. So right now we resort to jugaad. Now, virtual reality is an important tool. It is something which you can imagine beyond television or YouTube, because it gives the immersive learning out of classroom. If I have to, I'm talking about Newton's laws of physics. Okay. Now, one thing is that I can talk about physics on blackboard, which is the conventional way. The more modern way would be to show a video with some infographics, with some ideas to show what is exactly happening, maybe something from YouTube or some other resources I can use in teaching. But just imagine if you use virtual reality. When you wear the headset, you are teleported from your classroom away from all the distractions, and you are in the other environment in 3 dimensions. You can interact, and you could perhaps even talk to an avatar of Newton who can explain to you from his own words that why did this apple falling was so different from the other apples. Apples have been falling for millions of years. So you see, that becomes a personal contact, and your own personal experience. Even if you go there together as a class with avatars in the metaverse, you can experience things in a different way. And this is deeper impact on learning. Why? Because you're using more than one senses. So it becomes a sensory experience, so to speak. And therefore, the object-oriented learning in this case can be achieved. So it's more impactful. Now, of course, the problem and the challenges which we face, for example, in universities and all around the world, there has been use and abuse of the word metaverse. While we understand bigger understanding of what the metaverse will exist, technology is still evolving, and not everybody is aware of what this really means for education, or for even for gaming, or for buying things, or and so on and so forth. The experiences which most people have created are in infancy. A lot of research is required, a lot of safeguarding, etc., is required so as to bring the ecosystem together. But this will evolve. The hardware and the software will evolve, and I'm not so worried about it. What is extremely important is that the teachers, they get exposure with the technology. You can just put your mobile phone, which everybody has got, on a Google Cardboard box, which doesn't cost a lot of money, and this is what we teach, for example, as well. And you can go 360 immersive straight away. So the part to virtual reality is not only high-end game development, interactive experiences with multiple senses. would be just audio video in 360, which is also really a great way. And the teachers and the professors and the universities, they need to experiment. Just like you set up a budget on computing, doesn't buy all the computers with it. Set up a small budget for buying one or two immersive devices. They don't need to be expensive. A lot of hardware guys will anyway support education institutes by giving them low cost or even zero cost devices. So us as industry, we've got connections to some of these manufacturers, and they're very willing to explore the market in the developing world. I also believe that this is a great experiment from a personal point of view. Unfortunately, in March 2020, my child became very ill, and he spent almost a month in the hospital, and he's undergoing chemotherapy. So I took one day this virtual reality experience that Rishi had created, India's journey to the moon in Chandrayaan. So we hadn't launched it to the public, and I asked my son, "Why don't you try this on?" Now he was all bootstrapped with all the wires going around him in a very confined, tight location um, in the ICU, and I hope that nobody has to go through that experience. But when he saw this, he could forget all his pain. He was disconnected from the hospital, and he could really feel, calm as well. So he asked me, "Papa, I want to learn how you make this, not how you play these games only." So that was the invention of VR Academy, and I took that problem to my team. Can a 9, 10-year-old child learn how to, make their own stories in virtual reality and not just play them? And today we set up the academy. So in the academy, last 1 year, we've had about 550 children pass through the academy, and the number is growing day by day. The idea is very simple. For us, just like a doctor needs to be agnostic of the medicines and pharma industry, us as educators need to be agnostic of the content and the hardware industry as well. We should give all tools to our children. And immersive learning, I have found, has got a way better, deeper impact. And it's one additional toolkit for the educators, teachers, and the community, not just to play, but to learn as well. That's the key. And play and learn together, maybe.
Right. Completely with you, Sonal, on this. Yes, I think the education industry needs to be a little forward-looking and understand that there's these technologies which are becoming tools, and if you leverage them, you can completely upend the way how they educate in the schools and colleges, and the way for learning. I think virtual reality is that tool which provides you like that immersive and experiential learning. You can be in a situation like you mentioned, understand how the apple is falling, maybe have a conversation with Newton itself, maybe be in a battlefield and understand actually the history rather than just reading it in your in the book. So that's what I think virtual reality does. And the way the technology stack is growing today, we can simulate the visual and audio very, very well with the audio, the 360 and ambisonic spatial sound, the visual with your stereoscopic or monoscopic virtual reality, and you're completely immersed. But I think going forward, we will also have haptic feedback, which will get integrated, and possibly then maybe you'll be able to actually, maybe from the comfort of your home, possibly, sit in a school which will be completely global, where students could be sitting from any different part of the world, and you could possibly maybe reach out to the other student who could be sitting in America or UK, and I think that's what is happening. And schools and colleges and institutes, they need to understand this and start leveraging these technologies. So you create the building blocks of what could be the future of education. You briefly mentioned about VR Academy, and you briefly mentioned about also your son, how he got into virtual reality, and he almost forgot pain, and VR can be used for these VR healthcare, VR therapy, pain management, and it's so profound that these technologies allowing you to do that. So I think there is it's not just education, it's healthcare, it's training, and there's so many other use cases. Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on VR Academy? Where is it being used? What are the courses you offer, and what's the price point?
Some guys who are very good in music, some guys who are very good in film production. My better half was a special needs teacher, and actual teachers involved. I got involved with some of other friends who have written specific books on the use of virtual reality and special needs. And when we got this ecosystem of teachers, of special needs, experts, of people who knew art and technology, then we created a curriculum which was the right blend of different sources. What are these sources? These sources are clearly creative design, okay, field, or creative fields, or art fields, because to create a beautiful experience, it needs to be artistic in nature. Number one, we got the right experts who know, how does pedagogy and teaching really works. So they were really good tech or IT or just teachers itself. For me, because of my child's special circumstances, I wanted the academy to be focused specifically for special needs. And research with my friends had shown, who had done research, that children with autistic spectrum disorder, Asperger's syndrome, for example, or those with ADD or ADHD, they could also feel calm in a virtual environment. So I wanted my courses to be inclusive, with a baseline of special needs and disability. So, and then most importantly, I want, from my background in creativity, I strongly believe that you cannot create anything if you are stressed. So we needed to somehow disconnect the current stresses of children and then bring them into the class. So we call them point zero. And then, I wanted to get, experts who have got this knowledge on how can I boost or enhance creativity through some of the, modern, I would say, energy processes, or, spiritual processes which exist in all the world. I wanted to get them involved as well. So we call them mindfulness processes in creativity. But if your mind is full, then you can't create anything. And if your mind is empty, then also you can't create anything. So mind balancing techniques, I would say that. So the courses started, the foundation of the curriculum started with something, and this is also on our website as well, started with the base of special needs becomes a foundation. So if you have any special needs, even if you're gifted and talented, you're still special. So that is inclusive. Inclusivity is a key. The first part of every class begins with, how do I remove my stresses of daily life? How do I switch this off? And how do I turn my creative process in my mind on? So there is a 3-minute exercise to say, stop, pause, breathe, and observe. Without that, we don't start our classes. So that's the core. And that really disconnects you from your worries. The second important element is that design is not about software at all. Software is there to enable you. So how do I start the design? And the biggest design inspiration for us is our mother nature. So whatever topic we'll pick up, if we pick up the topic of, say, the 6, sustainable house, or engineering, or a nice car that you need to design, or whatever else, why can't we not observe nature and mimic the biology? So half of our classes are nothing to do with computing software at all. They're all to do with playing things, creating stuff in music. Experimenting with your hands is the key. Making your hands dirty is the key. And then comes up experience. So once they have made their product, it could be hand drawn or computer generated, they create their experience in virtual reality. And this is done using various software, again, using stuff like Mozilla or Spatial, or maybe Unity, or now right now we start teaching with Unreal Engine as well. So upgrading it all the way through. Now, what are the and then at the top we also looked at how are we going to obtain the IP or copyright of this system. So we then started to make NFTs. The children started to make NFTs of their creation. So then they are minting their NFTs. They learn all about how the crypto is connected to the Web3 or the virtual world, and how it influences. And perhaps some of them have got some great ideas as well on how we can make cryptos and tokens more sustainable, so we can get away from these current problems of energy consuming unsustainable, the crypto platform. We talked about the courses. So what are the paths that we can go inside? Clearly, you can take any path and you can learn virtual reality. You can be a doctor and learn virtual reality, a medical path. But at early childhood level, firstly, we have divided the courses into 2 age groups. And this is extremely important because the cognitive ability of younger children is different from others. While we say age is no bar, you can have children who are let's take, for example, 6 or 7 years old, and they are gifted and talented, and they would perform way above their age. Or you can have slow learners. We find sometimes children who are 18 and 19, but then their abilities are slightly that of a younger age group, perhaps, for example. So we don't discriminate on the basis of age. That is not right for an educator, but we try to look at their ability and put them into the right slot. That is important. And with 18 plus, now we are creating new curriculum, which is mainly meant for university plus students. And we just recently created called a course for metaverse for decision makers, which is for people who are like you and me and my age, our age group, with gray hair, perhaps, for example, who really want to get into metaverse. They don't have time, maybe just a day, and they want to know what it means for them, for their company, and so on and so forth. So I'm at this forum right now, which is the logistics conference. You'll be surprised that over here, people want to know about what metaverse is and what it means for them. And they've come to our academy to teach them about the metaverse. So it's for all ages. Our current age profile is all the way from 8-year-old children from Sydney all the way till Washington, D.C. What the children really learn, 3 paths to creativity are there with us. If you think about it, that ultimately the use of immersive technology is to gamify all experiences. So if I am a doctor, I want to gamify my experience, so I'm using it in the right way. But I'm actually producing a game. Now, what is game? A game is, if you look at any of the games like Spider-Man or like Mario, they all have a story. They all have sound. They all have music. So no game would be possible without a good story. It'll be rubbish, If you just have to go on killing people, that's not a game. That's like arcade, So even arcade games like Mario had a story. That's why they became so successful. Or Pac-Man has a story as well. So the game experience is nothing. It's an animated film with code attached to it. If I open one door, I see a dragon. I open the other door, I see a princess or a prince. So if you have a story in which your actions will change the course of that story, that becomes a game. That is the ultimate aim. But how you reach it, it is better if you have the understanding of the film production process then, because then you know how you can animate, you know how you can create your 3D objects, how you can create your props. Now, these are the 3 ingredients: creative art or digital design, filmmaking, and game production. These are the 3 elements of our VR Academy. And you can learn any of these 3. In the first 3 months, if you do a comprehensive course, you learn the basics. And if you do next 3 months, that's the advanced level, you learn how to create your own film, your own game. And that's your own project. As teachers, we just project manage it for the students. And if you do level up, then you go deep dive into it, which is another 3 months. And you can start at any three points: game, film, or design. And once you're finished, you can go to the next level so as to get a holistic application. VR is central to it. NFT curation is central to it. And that's what creates Academy with the bottom line of send needs. And the courses are as long as you want to be. Some children do it as a summer camp course in 2 or 3 days. They finish, get the basics. Others, they go deeper dive. And we have students who are now, we launched our product in August 2021. So it's slightly more than a year. Some people joined even before the launch because they knew what we were doing. So we have had students or children in the academy since 1.5 years, and they don't want to stop. Some of them, they want to stop their main college because they find it distractive and they want to join VR Academy full time. Price point you asked, we start at whatever is affordable for parents. I never created this startup I believe, to make money or something, because that was not the vision. I'm still being told by my bean counters that this is not the right path to be. So we have never turned anybody away for money that they can't afford. We have offered courses to children's SOS villages in Bhuj and in Pune for completely free. We worked with some organizations in Janwar. Janwar is a small village in Madhya Pradesh, but one of my friends, she made a skate park over there. She's actually the real lady who is behind the skaterboard movie. The real story of hers has been personified. And she put 2 IMAX, and we give those children free education. So and even if suppose some devices need to be given, we were putting them over there. Children were learning how to make their Google Cardboard boxes. But for those who can afford, they start with 6,000 rupees in India, and the price is slightly higher in developed countries, around $350 for the full course, which is around If you pay per month, it's about 69 odd dollars, or in India, it starts for 4,000 or 5,000 rupees a month. And then it goes up depending upon what you're learning. So we have not created a barrier for price. We want people to learn. I believe in India. I strongly believe that it's my Karam Bhumi, coming from there, and a lot of tech people come from there. If we give the tools, if we give the knowledge, children will do their best. This is what we want to do. We recently signed up with Isha Foundation of Sadhguru as well. So we are trying to take our courses at grassroots level so as to bring the digital transformation in the villages itself. And that's the key experiment for us.
Lovely.
And for those who can pay, then they better pay and cross-subsidize the other part.
You have the right approach to education. I wish you all the success. If there's anybody who's listening, whether it's students, whether it's parents, whether it's colleges, institutes, who would want to get in touch with you, where do they get in touch with you? And what would be your pitch to them?
So the pitch is very simple. Create your I am possible. Let the children create their impossible or I am possible. That is the mantra. If you want to learn how to create your impossible, it can be done. Luckily, I'm living in Dubai right now. I call Dubai probably as one of the most developed cities of India. While of course people can get me wrong, and I hope that no politicians tell me like this, how is Dubai India? But believe me, this country, UAE, has people have a lot to learn from this country. It's a country of tolerance, where all religions and people from all around the world come and work together. It's a city where sky is the limit. I call it the Legoland for designers. If you have a design which is crazy enough, nobody will tell you, no, don't do this. They will say, okay, tell me how to do this. So us as designers, we are learning how to get inspired, and the leadership is quite visionary. There's a lot of support which is available. That's why we are based over here. They have specific ministries like Ministry of Possibilities. If you have any possible ideas, you go and talk to the ministry, and hopefully they will help you out. So it's possible to do things in an easier and a quicker way. There's a Ministry for Artificial Intelligence. And these are some of the core things. The ecosystem is required. I believe this, if somebody's listening from the government, I believe that can we not create this ecosystem? Us as Indians have made great cities and great companies outside. How can we enable that to happen? And we want to make that happen within our own country, India as well. That's the key. Make this transformation happen. Allow experimentation to happen. Let's be bold to take some big decisions. There will always be risk associated with something that you've not done, but the bigger risk is not to try it at all, because then if you will not fail, believe me, you will not succeed. It's impossible. And I'm a marathon runner, so for those of you who have been into sports, anybody into sports, you will hit a wall sometime in your run or in your career. That is going to happen. It's impossible that you will go up without seeing the down. If you only go up, then it is no way possible. So when you hit the wall, know that there's an end as well. So there's a fine line to it. So that's the key. And now, and for those of you who are really interested to join our academy, they can get in touch with me through all the social media channels. You will probably be sharing the email. You can also share my telephone, personal mobile number. I've got no problem. Parents waking me up in the middle of the night. I want that trouble to happen. I also say the thing that God only gives you problems that you can solve. So I believe in the divine energy. You could call it anything, but there's a divine energy which is connecting all of us. And you only get problems that you can solve. So if I get bigger problem, I feel privileged to solve that, So connect with me online. Also, you can look at vracademy.com. It's academy with an I, vracademi.com. We are registered as a startup in Ireland. We have a branch in India and we want to grow that. We have a base in Dubai where we're giving face-to-face classes. So schools who want to set up a metaverse lab, colleges who want to set up an experience lab, governments who want to know what should I do with what should be my policy on metaverse, decision makers who want to dabble into Web3, they come to us and we'll give the best of the knowledge, not only what we have got as an academy, but in the whole industrial ecosystem as well. That's what we try to achieve.
Sunny, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. Wish you and the team the very best for whatever you're doing, plus your VR Academy. My last question is, I'm going to dig something. You said something in the beginning of the conversation. You mentioned something which is extremely profound. You mentioned that you build digital twins for trams, and buses should be a priority, not cars. I think that's the future if you want to build a sustainable city. So somebody who's been vested in AI, somebody who's been building digital twins, has built digital twins for London Tram. How's this new technology, metaverse, AI, digital twins, sustainability, gonna create a future? And if you can, will appreciate if you could paint the future what the world will look like in the next 10 years, with the convergence of metaverse, AI, digital twins, and virtual reality.
Again, I would fast forward it too much. I will not talk about 10 years. I will talk about the world in 100 years or 500 years. Can we imagine how we were living 100 years ago? Yes, we can, because I had a grandfather who was almost 100 years old. So he used to tell me stories, and I've seen the world from his eyes, from his lens. He experienced the partition of India, and he was under the British Raj, working as a civil servant, and then with the new government as well. He could see things. So there were stories that he could tell, and I used to sleep to those stories, imagining how India and Pakistan were one country, perhaps, for example. Okay, good, bad, whatever, we are where we are. The politics should be able to heal, I believe, not create differences. I strongly believe that us as a human race, if we do not kill ourselves with some stupid wars which are happening anywhere in all societies, if we can overcome the differences which we all have, then truly we will become an interplanetary and hopefully an intergalactic species. And if we are going to become an interplanetary species, if we are going to be on Mars, or if we are going to be on the next exoplanet out there, it is impossible for us to travel back. But we always want to be connected with our world, with our mother nature. So this virtual reality technology, which is not just audio, video, but with all the haptic senses, the sense of touch, the sense of, the feeling, for example, all the sense of our skin, for example, smell and taste, they will all become truly immersive. And Beam Me Now, Scotty, will not happen in the next 100 years with you disintegrating into millions of atoms and reintegrating somewhere else. But it'll happen through immersive technology, both augmented and virtual reality. I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we will have a contact lens with data being pushed in front of our eyes so that we don't have to have this device. This is going to go out of its way for sure. It's too bulky, it's too obsolete. We are dependent on it, but it's not needed anymore. So we'll have an immersive tech in the next 10 years in front of us. We will be able to improve our capabilities as humans by getting biomedical implants which enhance the capability of humans. Clearly, these implants are available which remove the disability of humans. Just imagine if we can enhance. But the objective is that we have to address some core issues to reach that 100 or 200 years point. Climate change is the biggest issue. And if we can use this technology, if I can use a technology like what we have done to connect together virtually instead of traveling all the way and burning all the fossil fuels, that is the way. So I believe that if this technology can be used to address climate change issues, make world a safer place, then truly we become interplanetary and we can make not wars, but Star Trek a possibility. Nobody wants wars, but a possibility to create. And this technology then becomes truly possible. Even in our older history, it's said that mind is the biggest source. This virtual reality technology allows a conscious mind to escape the boundaries of the physical space. Something which was very hard to achieve and only you could do through deep meditation before, we have the power to give it to everybody right now. And I think visionaries such as Mr. Zuckerberg, people may not like him or dislike him, and this is separate, but he has clearly got something clear in his vision. And therefore, there's a push towards that technology, and a great possibility exists to make our world a better place.
Sunny, thank you once again for taking time and being part of the podcast, sharing not just the insight, but foresight of how the world is going to look like. Whatever you said, I think it's going to be true in the next couple of maybe years or decade. And you pointed out that climate crisis is an existential threat. And I think we need to work as a collective and not look at what India has done, created this mandate that 2070 is going to be, we're going to go, net zero carbon emission. I don't understand understand that this thing. I don't even know whether we got the privilege to go till 2030 or 2040 by the way we are consuming mindlessly without any conservation. And you also mentioned about Mark Zuckerberg. I think he's the only guy who's, though people try to bring him down, and there are a couple of wrongs that he has done, but I think when it comes to virtual reality and metaverse, I think he's the single human being in the planet who's driven the entire conversation forward when it comes to virtual reality and metaverse. And I think I want to end it on this profound note that you said, that politics should heal, not divide. If people don't know history, they need to go back and check that India or Hindustan, we were as one country, all Bangladesh, Pakistan, everyone. Politics divided. And I hope that politics can unite as, not just India and Pakistan, but the entire world, because the opportunity is humongous and metaverse is going to make all the possible. Wish you the very best for VR Academy. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, Sonal. Really appreciate this.